My name is Jim Maughan, and I'm kind of the MC of these discovering, the Cyberquery discovery sessions. And each month we have a guest consultant. Our guest consultant today is one of our senior consultants named Zach Lyons. And Zach has been with CyberScience now 4 years. And a lot of you probably met him at some of the trade shows that we've gone to. So Zach's going to be doing the presentation today. Really appreciate him helping out. We've also got Paul Engelbert, our Director of Professional Services, and Jeff Dabbert on the line as well to help with any questions that may pop up. But as you can see from this slide, this is the 6th episode. We're going to be talking about vendor performance scorecards. And at the end of every session, there is a survey. So if you want to request a link to the recording of this session or any of the prior sessions, please just enter that in the survey, and we'll be sure to get those off to you. So, okay, to get started here, we want to just kind of discuss the whole purpose of the Cyberquery Discovery webinars. The main purpose is to advance your Cyberquery skill sets and help you maybe figure out new ways to use the software. It's all customer driven. So again, the other part of the survey that you'll fill out at the end is a list of topics that you'd like to see us cover going forward. So please fill that out. Let us know your preferences, and we'll use that to select some of the upcoming sessions. And if you don't mind, just plan on every third Wednesday at this time. So 2:00 East Coast, 1 Central, or 11 o'clock Pacific time. So today's session, we're going to be talking about vendor scorecards. Now, we're really kind of blessed because Zach has actually had to build this for specific customers. So he kind of understands what people are looking for and has built this in a consulting environment. So he knows the questions that come up and some of the issues. So he'll be able to talk specifically about what he sees from customers when it comes to these vendor scorecards. We'll have questions and answers at the end. But if a question comes up, we can't actually hear it interactively, but type it into that question and answer box within Zoom, and I'll be watching those. And at the appropriate time, I might interrupt Zach to ask him a few questions. So fill those out, and then I'm going to turn the time over to Zach right now. So take it away, Zach.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Jim. So, yeah, like Jim mentioned, we're talking about vendor scorecards and vendor performance today. So, on my first slide here, I've just got a quick example for you guys. Shows you a similar example to what we built for the customer that asked us about this report way back when. So. They were looking for a document that pulls from their database that essentially they can hand to their vendor or their supplier and say, hey, you guys are doing a great job, keep it up, or hey, we're not loving the the quality and the on-time shipment performance recently. We've got some kind of hard data to back that up. So. This output you see right here is a pretty complex macro output. I've got a couple examples for you all that show some slightly more basic calculations in this report. Things like the on-time percentage and the quantity rejected. We'll start small, and then I'll kind of build to a more complex example that shows you guys some of the details behind this example on my screen. So I'm going to get away from my PowerPoint slides here and jump into an in-system example that I have prepared for you all. The first one that I'll show you guys is just how to calculate whether an order was on time or not, or specifically a order line. There's a couple of different tables that I'm going to rely on. for this report. I'm connected to a Sightline or a CSI database for this example. So all of the table names will match that database. If you're working in Visual or LN, Bond, something like that, you'll just want to find the equivalent table that stores this information. So the couple of tables that I'm using here in this example, the first one, my domain table I see identified by this red dot here. I'm going to use the PO receipt master. This table just holds all of the PO receipts that you have in Sightline or in your ERP database. Then another table that I'm using for this example is the PO item master table. That table just stores all of your purchase order lines that you've purchased from your vendors. So I've got a little bit of I've pulled a couple of rows into this report that show me what happened on an individual order line. Mostly just focused on due dates and quantities received and returned in the output I currently have in front of me. But I want to focus on these two columns that I have highlighted blue right now. So those are the due date and the receive date. I guess I did get a little bit ahead of myself here. One thing I forgot to mention too is when we're evaluating vendor performance, we only want to do that on closed or fulfilled orders, right? Anything that has a status of F or C. We don't really want to grade our vendors on any open orders just because those are still in progress and still in the process of being fulfilled. So I used a record selection statement here to filter out any order lines that are still in that status of O. All right, so then back to the date calculation here. So I'm just going to create a simple binary field that tells me whether or not an order was received on time. So in plain English here, if the receive date occurred before the due date, show that the order was on time. Otherwise, say it was not on time. So I'm going to build this using a new expression from my expression library right here. If you don't see it in your options list, you may have to scroll down a little bit. I'm going to take a new expression, drag it into my list section of this query. And this will just be some pretty simple conditional logic that I'm using to calculate this field. So I'll say if the PO item masked as my table. So if the receive date if I can spell the receive date abbreviation properly, if receive date is less than or equal to the due date, then print a 1 in that column. 1 being, a yes or an affirmative or a success. If anyone's not quite used to working with with binary type fields. So if the order was received on time, print a 1 in that column. Otherwise, print a 0. So I'm going to click OK here. I'll kind of spot check line by line here. So my first order line was received on the exact day that it was due. So that looks good. I know, I know that portion is working correctly. My second line was received almost a year and a half after the due date. So that one correctly showing a 0. So my binary field for on time is working correctly. One more step here. I'm just going to give this a header a header that describes the column a little bit better. So I'm going to call this my on time column or my on time field. So now that I have a column to indicate whether an order was received on time, now I'm going to save this data for use in a downstream report. If anyone's ever worked with hold files before in Cyberquery, that's exactly what I'm going to use to take care of this step. So I'm going to switch over. Hold files can only be created or modified using the Cyberquery language editor. So I'm going to click my keyboard icon to change over to the language editor. This current set of data that I'm looking at in my output section, I want to save this to a file that I can use in a downstream report. So up in my list line right here, where I apply report level switches or report level properties, I'm going to add the hold switch. So I'll add the hold switch and say hold is equal to vendor scorecard HF. Again, at the end of the day, all a hold file really is just a container for your data. So people use these in a lot of different ways in Cyberquery. If you want to just take a smaller subset of the columns that are available in your Infor ERP database, store them to a temporary file on the Cyberquery server. That's a good use case for a hold file. Hold files can also be indexed however you like. So if you don't like the default index structure in your database, you can use a hold file to get around that. Those are just a couple of a handful of many different ways that you can use hold files. But again, for this example, I'm creating a hold file to store this data set right here that I'm going to use in the next report that I show you guys in just a second. So I'll click my running man right here to execute my query. And you'll notice now, instead of getting an output down in this report section down below, I just get I just get an information box telling me, that this data was saved to a hold file called Vendor Scorecard, how many records that were in it. You guys might have noticed I had a little warning pop up here. It's just telling me I had the duplicates switch applied as well. It's just warning me that has no difference or impact on a hold file. So still wrote my hold file, but I don't have a hard error to correct here. So just in case anyone was curious about the warning that popped up on my screen. But now that I have this data saved to a hold file, I'm going to jump into another query and show you guys a couple more calculations that you guys can do with this PO receipt and PO item data. So now in the second example, notice the table that I'm using as my domain, right? I have the red dot over my vendor scorecard hold file, which is telling me this is my domain file. So the hold file data set that we created in my first query here, I'm now using this as the domain for a sum report that I'm going to do some additional vendor performance calculations on. So I'm looking at just one specific vendor in 1 year, just to make this look a little bit cleaner on your guys' screen. So the vendor data set has been filtered based on a vendor number and a year. What I'm going to show you guys is now a couple of calculations that you can use to calculate the on-time rates and also the defect rate or the return rate of your shipments received from a vendor. So the first one is really easy. I've got a copy of the on time column that we created in our last query. I've also got a copy of um, I've also got a column here that shows me the total number of PO lines that were shipped in a given month. My calculation here is really simple. I'm just going to hold down my shift key and then click on these two fields to highlight them both. Then with them both highlighted blue, I'm going to right click, go to divide selected items. I'm going to say I want to divide on time by the total PO lines shipped. So you'll notice I just get an integer value here. I don't get I don't get any decimal places or a percentage outputs. There's a couple more steps I need to go through here just to clean up exactly how this column looks. So I'm going to right click on the column and go to item properties. And on the numeric tab, I'm going to say I want to show this column as a percentage. I also want to show 2 decimal places for the numbers that are printed in that column. So right now it's just rounding to the nearest whole number, which isn't super helpful when I'm looking at proportions. When I click OK to add these 2 item properties, now I have a column that looks more like an on-time rate, right? So we can kind of track this vendor's performance over the course of time here in terms of an on-time rate. So I'm going to go ahead and change this column as well. This is going to be my on-time percentage. Change the column header here. And then with the other metric that I'm using here, it's really basically the same calculation or the same steps, I should say, in Cyberquery. We just want to calculate the rate of how many, how many pieces from are we sending back to the vendor because they were because they were not functional or broken in the shipment process. So to calculate the return rate, I'm just going to rinse and repeat the same process that I did for the on-time percentage. I'll highlight these 2 columns and say I want to divide the quantity returned by the quantity vouchered. So again, that didn't give me, it's showing me the calculation as a whole number right now rather than a percentage. So I'm going to go back to item properties, just go through those same 2 steps that I did with the on-time percentage column. I want to show this as a percentage. I want to specify 2 decimal places here. So now that since we're only this vendor is doing a pretty good job quality wise, we only have 2 pieces returned from a total quantity of over 1,400. So I added some item properties that kind of that show just how small that percentage of returned items is. I needed to show it as a percentage and then take it out to 2 decimal places. So now that I have the calculations I care about in my query, I'm just going to remove all of these other, all these other fields that I use to construct the calculations. All I really care about from a reporting standpoint is the on-time percentage, and then give this column a name to our return rate. So once I have a calculation of these 2 columns, I can use the conversion functionality in Cyberquery to go ahead and convert this to a chart. If I want to see, if I want to see how this looks graphically, I'm going to go to convert report type and convert to a chart. I'm going to do this in a new tab so I can still go back to my old sum report if I want. And Cyberquery does a pretty good job at converting this to a line graph that shows me that on-time rate over time, but also that defect rate or that return rate. So um, Cyberquery is also smart enough to notice here we have multiple plot items, so it's going to ask me how I want to display them. Do I want them all on the same chart? Do I want it on two charts kind of stacked right on top of each other? I kind of automatically detected that from my, from my conversion to charts. So just another cool Cyberquery feature there. Okay. The last example I have for you guys is just kind of walking through that vendor scorecard that we showed you on my first slide today. So this is a pretty complex query, complex macro. If anyone wants to borrow some of this code, go ahead and let Jim or myself know, and we can supply some of it for you. But this is what the finished product might look like. Might look like using some of the calculations that we've done in these previous examples. So I've got I'm looking at a specific vendor over 1 month in 2024. I've got their on-time percentage down here. The total quantity that was rejected or sent back over that time period. And we're using these metrics to derive an overall score for the vendor, right? So this may differ depending on what your business rules are, right? So this specific customer puts more weight on the quality rather than the on time of the delivery. So quality is worth 75 points in this score, whereas as on time delivery only worth 25. So that's something that's kind of flexible and configurable. You can modify exactly how these scores are calculated based on what you value or what your business needs are. I've also got a trend down at the bottom of this PDF that shows the vendor's performance over the past couple of months. We didn't have any we didn't have any receipts from them in March 2024, but this is a tool that you can use to kind of show them, hey, performance is going down over the last couple of months. What can we do about this, or what can we do to improve that? Here is just last but not least, before I turn things back over to Jim, this is just the macro code that constructs that. So just in very a quick summary here, these first couple lines refresh the hold file that is used to build the reports. I've got a run line that runs the upper portion, and then that trend graph that you see in the lower portion. And then this last command right here, the compose, it takes the upper section and the trend graph and kind of combines them together into one final PDF output that you see here. That you saw previously on my screen, I should say. So I know I ran a little bit long there. I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball back to Jim at this point, who's going to go ahead and finish up the session for us. So thanks for the time, everyone.
Okay. Hey, Zach, and one question came in asking, is it possible to email out those scorecards automatically?
Yes, it is. If you have a long story short, you can use the CQCS mail command to send it to your vendor on an automated basis as well.
Cool. All right. And let's see, another question just came in. You showed us using Sightline. Will this also work for Infor LN?
It will. You just have to identify the PO lines and PO receipts tables in those environments. I do not have those off the top of my head, but it should work just the same with those two tables in an LN environment.
Perfect. All right. Hey, thank you, Zach. Okay, so what I want to do is, again, just remind you at the end of this session, you're going to see a link for a survey. Please take a couple of minutes and fill it out, and just tell us what you'd like to see in the next session. We're trying to keep these all to 30 minutes, but we've received some good input. So our plans are that we'll probably be doing real-time job boards next month, but then from there, help us fill in what you'd like to see when. So there seems like a lot of interest in doing subqueries, job efficiency reports, and then Cyberquery AI is a big one. And just for background, we're starting the beta testing of Cyberquery AI here in the next week or two or three. So the timing might be great to show you guys a new demo on what's going on with CQ AI here in about a month or two. So keep that in mind. But again, as as it all comes about, fill that in and we'll kind of prioritize these sessions. And again, as part of that survey, you'll be able to request a link to the recording of this session, as well as all sessions that we've done so far this year. So, fill those in. And I do see that there's one more question that came in about those hold files, Zach. So those hold files, can they be indexed if needed?
They can, yes. You can do as many primary and secondary keys on a hold file as you need. They're really flexible for indexing, and then to take it one step further as well, that is you can index it however you want to facilitate joins to other tables in your Sightline, LN, visual database, whatever type of ERP you're using.
Perfect. All right. That sounds great. So like we've completed all the questions here. So thanks everybody for attending and look forward to seeing you again third Wednesday of next month. So thanks for attending.